in order to help with that. However, the focus on accuracy and relevance in these systems can have a negative impact on the available of divergent information, thus leading to filter bubbles and only being provided with information that actually agrees with you. Decision support systems use big data to support knowledge management and their resulting activities. And we are aware that there are known biases that can be addressed by technical solutions. But what we are concerned about are these unknown social and statistical biases, and how do you deal with these blind spots? This is what leads us into serendipity. Serendipity is the occurrence and development of events by chance in a happy or beneficial way. So imagine walking through your own city and encountering a crossroad and deciding to go left instead of right, and then finding the most perfect coffee house and your favorite spot forever. This is a very simple principle. However, when we're talking about in the context of knowledge, serendipitous discoveries are actually more complex and are a result of a combination of user characteristics and so-called environmental factors. The environmental factors are diversifiability, transferability, and sensoriability. I will explain these. So diversifiability is how much difference is there within the content that is available. So imagine having a job matching system, and how easy is it to go from one field to another, or from being offered jobs in full-time or a part-time function. Transferability means how easy is it to actually move within that. And so if you decided to look into a job in retail, how easy is it then to also be offered other jobs, vacancies that are similar in nature? And sensoriability is really regarding how is it presented? Is it user-friendly? And is the design intuitive in that regard? An important factor, as mentioned, was the user involvement as well. Björn Born, who wrote about the serendipity, has mapped 3 personal factors that can actually be very easily mapped on the environmental factors. And those are curiosity, which is how curious are you to actually go beyond the field that you're currently in. Mobility, which means how willing are you to take the extra step, and how capable are you to do the same. And sensitivity is how likely are you to be influenced by hyperlinks or other visual stimuli. In regards to the earlier mentioned blind spots, we don't think that serendipity alone would help here. It would create diversifiability, but it would not really solve biases itself. So in order to combine the two, we have proposed this framework, where within the environmental factor of diversifiability, we would propose to actually design for equity as in order to get diverse content. Before I go further, I'll just explain a little bit where equity is really important in relation to data, and that's historical bias. This is when post-societal biases are encoded within data systems and historic data sets and systems, and this is called historic bias. So that can be seen in, for example, the Amazon case, where an AI recruiting tool showed bias against women because of historical data, or it can actually be non-digital in the case of for safety in cars, because cars used to be tested on male dummies of a certain weight and a certain height. And this ensured that currently, if you are in a car as a person of a non-standard shape, you are more likely to suffer injuries. And because the data sets are already gathered, historical bias is and can be reproduced in digital systems. Algorithmic fairness is a means to address inequality by providing equality to all, but it is not enough. Why do we say this? If you look at this picture, which is produced by the Robert Woodson Foundation, you can see that if we provide everyone with the same bike to get to the same destination, it's not really fair, because the little child and the tall man are really struggling. One person cannot even start to get there, and only one person has all the advantages. And that's why it's important to take equity into account, because equity actually looks at the past experiences of an individual to address inequality. And that means that in order to achieve the destination, everyone gets an adjusted bike. And this is what we mean with equity. How can you achieve equity? The three concepts that we want to address are actually part of two streams. That's data justice, which has a focus on incorporating different user experience into design and practice of systems, and critical feminist theory, which is actually a combination of many theories within social sciences focused on feminism. And the three values that are applicable here is that they have a focus on the lived experiences and ensuring that every experience is valuable. An awareness of the fact that data and science is never value-free, and that differences are not ignored, but actually acknowledged. This was earlier already explained by Karima, I think. So you have intersectionality, which means that you as a person are not made up of only one distinctive class, but you are actually impacted by many different classes, and this can lead to a differential treatment. And in order to take that into account, intersectionality and awareness of that needs to be taken into account. I will talk later how we can do that. These are the power dynamics. This means that there's structural oppression, and that is made up of 4 dimensions. You have structural dimension, which organizes laws and policies, the disciplinary layer, which manages the oppression by applying the laws and policies, the hegemonic dimension, which ensures that there's an acceptance and that everyone is aware of the oppression, and finally, it's the personal experience of oppression. And again, I will explain how you can use that later. And finally, the idea of reflexivity, which is, as D'Ignacio and Klein say, the ability to reflect on and take responsibility for one's own position within the multiple intersecting dimensions of the matrix of domination. Just to give a small example, which would be applicable to me, I am a 30-year-old European woman, and I'm well educated, so I know that certain experiences will not be mine, and I will need to listen to others in order to be able to understand them. So how do we actually apply this? How do we put this in practice? We used as basis Bin's and Gallo's idealized IE development process, and our viewpoint is that in order to design for serendipity and for equity, it's necessary to start at the beginning by involving stakeholders, by using a living lab approach. So ensuring that co-creation and user research and all the other social science research is done in a lab, as close to reality lab experience. So you would begin in this case, for example, with stakeholder mapping. This means that you would pay particular attention to ensuring that if you create a co-creation session or a user research track, that you ensure that there are a lot of divergent opinions there. Why is that important? These people with different experiences, so different intersections, are able to give you more information that might not be your lived experiences, and this might have an impact on how your algorithm, your decision system might impact society and how it can actually provide information. And as shown, this is an iterative process, so there's always necessary to take into account if there's changes to come back to that later. So to always have a check with your co-creation team, for example. And this is also in the reflexivity. So you start in the beginning, you say, this is who I am, and this has led to these decisions, and you document that throughout the process. And if you notice that you're missing out on perspectives, you go out and search for them. And you can do that by creating a board of stakeholders whose actual role is to get this, to give you that feedback, so that you know by using their strengths if you can improve your system. And this, we do recognize that there are bottlenecks in this. So for example, ethics by design is currently more a nice to have than an essential part of the process. So we know that ethics are important and that people do take them into account. But ethics by design, so from the start of the project, is not always the case. And in order to achieve equity and serendipity, we think it should be. And the reality of the process is often less straightforward than the idealized process. So if you think back on the previous slide, we are aware that if you look at the system, how the process is mapped, that is actually not the reality, and there needs to be more communication between social sciences and computer sciences, for example, but also others, in order to better understand each other. And I think Nicolaus also said that there needs to be a way that we can understand each other to avoid miscommunications. And in conclusion, including equity and serendipity within a decision support system would broaden the available information and the knowledge that different stakeholders can bring, and would therefore ensure that you get more divergent systems. And furthermore, inclusion of fairness through equity would be top of mind throughout the process and not only a nice to have. Thank you for your time, and